Hello, welcome to this new tutorial about TMS web core for Visual Studio Code. This is a new series in which I'm going to talk about the project management features. Just remind that, for example, if you are a RAD Studio user, you will be used to the concept of a project in which is a separate file, a dpr and a dproj file. But in Visual Studio Code there is no such concept. So what we have been doing at TMS is to implement such concepts so you feel familiar, and what you will be doing is to interact with an explorer-like tool. So it's actually an explorer where you can see all the files that are in a folder and all their subfolders, but you will see how to interact with that tool so you can still use your dpr and dproj in the same way you are used to. So the first thing to show is how to create a new web application. This has been shown on several other videos, but this is just for the sake of completion. So this is the repository where you have all your items that you can create new, and we are going to create a new web application. We are going to create a new folder for it, 103, and we save the project there. Okay, so this is the usual process, the traditional process in which that project is created on that folder, and all the files that make that project are created, and you get the form designer open with that unit. Okay. Apart from creating, I'm going to start by setting up the Git repository. I'm going to initialize that repository just for the goal is to be able to show you what are the changes that the TMS web core for Visual Studio Code plugin is doing when you perform some operations. So I'm going just to create a new terminal. And in this folder, what I'm going to do is to init that repository. Here it is. Okay. So, okay. And as you can see, all these files that are in this repository are meant to be committed. So I'm going to add a new file here. That's going to be the git ignore. And on that file, I'm going to ignore the node modules and its code, and I think that's it. Let's see. These are the files. Okay, so I'm going just to commit this initially. Commit. So the goal is that now every change I make to this folder, I will be able to show you the differences so you can see what are the changes introduced. Okay, so let's start. What you can do is, using the repository, you can create a new web form. If you do it, the new web form will be shown here, so you can drop your components and do anything that you want to do, and the pass file is also created. So now let's see about the Git repository. What are the changes introduced? So as you can see, the new unit has been added to the dpr, and also the form is created, but also the dproj is modified. So if you are familiar with the dproj format in RAD Studio, you will see this is the way to add a new form to the project, and of course the file that make up that new form. Okay, so apart from that, what you can do is to create on the repository, create new units. And this is this just create the unit and not the form. This is it's a simple unit in order for you to enter Pascal code. And as you can see, the names for the units are created using a unique name algorithm. So if there is another unit on that project with the same name, it will increment that unit name by 1. And also the changes to the dpr. Okay, the unit, as you can see, it doesn't contain the form definition, and also the dproj is also added here. This is the reference to the new unit that we have been adding. Okay, and also what you can do is to create a new data module. As if you remember the video about data modules, this is a container for non-visual components, and in the same way you have your unit here, so you can write your code and the dproj is updated properly. And as you can see, the base class, instead being Webform for regular forms, is Web data module. Okay, and the dpr, we're going to show it here. This is the dpr. Okay, it's added here, and this is the data module definition, and there is no HTML because there is no visual aspect or layout that you can use in order to use data modules. Okay, this is for creating new web applications and all the units that you can create inside. The same applies to web console applications. I'm going to do it. I'm going just to I'm going to discard all these changes. So I will be back to this project later. I'm going to discard all these changes. So the project goes back to the initial status, and what I'm going to do is to create a new web console application. This is a special type of application in the sense that it's meant to be non-visual in terms of HTML. It's just to create non-visual JavaScript applications. So I'm going to create here and save it here. You will see that it's quite different in terms that there is no visual form designer. Okay, the folder is created. As you can see, you start working on a project. Okay, and the application type is console, and here you can use commands like write-lm in order to dump text to the output, which actually is the browser. Okay, this is the web console app, but you can still, for example, creating new units. Okay, it's a new unit and will be added as expected to the project file, to the dpr, and also to the dproj. Okay, I haven't committed these changes to the repository, but I can show it here to you. Unit 2, so unit 1 pass. This is the reference to the unit we have just created. Okay, as you can see, you can work on visual and non-visual components. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to close this folder, and I'm going to open it again. Open the previous one. Open. I'm going to. This is the one I was working before, which has the Git repository, so I can show you the differences. Apart from using the repository, what you can do is to use the right-click, the contextual menu, so you can create new units and new web forms. This works exactly the same, but it has the advantage that, for example, if you create a new folder, you create here a subfolder, you can actually create the new unit or new web form inside that folder. Okay, as you can see, unit.pass has been created and dfm has been created on that subfolder, and it works exactly the same. And if we see the changes on the repository, the dpr, now unit 2 is pointing to the right subfolder. Okay, and the dproj is also containing the right subfolder and the right path. Okay, if you use this dproj and dpr on Riot Studio, it will work exactly the same. Okay, and the same applies also to units. So I can create a new unit here. Okay, so this is the unit pass, and on the dpr, if we see the this is the unit that we have just created. Okay, so this is the nice thing of using the right or the contextual menu here, so you can decide where your new items are created. Okay, and lately, one of the things that you can do is, for example, even if you create a new file, let's say, for example, test.txt, which is not like a code file, that file is also included. So if you check, it's not on dpr because it's not a Pascal file, but it's included on the dproj, so it's included into the project. Okay, and what you can do, for example, I will show that later, is to, if you right click here, you can remove it from the project. Okay, so what I wanted to show is that any file that you create on this folder is monitored and it's added to the project, so you don't have to worry about it and to add it to the project or whatever. So if you, for example, copy a file from an external folder here and you want to add it to the project, then this is where you can use this command in order to add that file to the project. Okay, so that's it. I hope you like it. I'm going to be working on more videos in where I will show you how the modifications you perform on your project, renaming files and so on, and removing files and deleting files, how all that work. But the goal is to let you know that this is actually an explorer, but interacts properly with the dproj and dpr files that you are used to with RAS Studio. Thank you.